Hello, my art-loving friends. I am Deborah Kaye, and I welcome you to Paint with a Passion. Today, we're going to paint this totally awesome zebra-striped wine bottle. You would never guess that it's so easy, and when you're all done, you're going to be amazed at just how professional this looks. Here is my recipe. You can pause here to gather what you need, or just refer to the list in the description area below this video. Get all your goodies together and let's make the magic happen as we paint with a passion. Today, I'm going to be painting on an empty wine bottle. Shout out to my sissy Linda for providing the wine bottles and for all that hard work you did emptying them for me. Thank you so much. It's greatly appreciated. I'm wearing gloves and using rubbing alcohol with a non-fuzzy cotton pad to remove all the oils and residue from the surface. I'm going to keep these gloves on until I finish painting the first coat so that I don't leave any oil from my skin on the bottle. If I was not painting the entire surface of the bottle, not only would I want to remove all the oils, but I would not want to leave any fingerprints on the bottle. Now, you can use any bottle that you like, and it doesn't even have to be a wine bottle. And it does not have to be round. It can be any shape you want. There are so many sizes and shapes to choose from, so no matter what you choose, it's going to be beautiful. I removed the labels and the glue using Glue Gun and a green scratchy pad, the kind without a sponge on the side. And then I washed the bottles with warm water and some dish soap. I have two different colored bottles here, and I'm not sure which one I'm going to use. It doesn't really matter which one because I'm going to paint over the entire surface of the bottle. Make sure that you wipe it down really good with the rubbing alcohol. Check it in the light to make sure there's not any spots where there's any oil remaining because your paint won't stick where there's oil on the glass. Also, when you're all done with that, make sure that there's no fuzzies left over from your cotton stuck on the bottle. And just like that, for no particular reason, she started painting the clear bottle. Well, I picked the clear bottle, and maybe it's just because it makes me feel a little bit cooler in this heat. Where I live, we don't really have 4 seasons. We have kind of cold, cold, very cold, and then the next day it's 90 degrees. Now, if a week of mild weather is considered a season, then I guess I do have seasons here. All I can say is that the heat makes my paint dry faster and it gives me sweaty gloves. Sweaty gloves. Now that is a great name for an album. Kind of like Smell the Glove by Spinal Tap. I know. Stop me now. All right. Now to focus back on the project at hand. I'm using a sponge brush to apply the base coat of white paint. I find it easier to control the paint splatter while holding the bottle at odd angles using a sponge brush versus a regular brush. I'm not painting the bottom of the bottle because, well, I'm not, and that's my final answer. But anyways, this base coat does not need to be perfect by any means. We're going to be adding a lot more paint, so just make sure there aren't any large unpainted areas. In my past tutorials, I've used gesso as my base coat. I don't need to do that here because the glass is not porous. I could, however, use it if I wanted to create some kind of a texture like a wood grain or bumpy raised surfaces. So you'll notice I'm using some plastic lids as little mini pallets. And my craft paint palettes, they do have an area to hold a bigger pool of paint, but the sponge brush doesn't fit on it very well. I found that these lids are really handy, and a lot of times I can just peel the paint right off of them once it dries. But they do wash up easy, and I just keep saving them. They also come in handy as a little trash collector on my work area to toss swabs and paint boogers into. Did I just say booger? I did. Anyways, so make sure that you've got the whole bottle covered with your base coat, and then let's get ready to move on to the next step. I am adding the second coat of white paint using my favorite sponges. I'm using this technique in order to give the surface a suede-like appearance. I'm using a generous amount of paint, but not so much that it's swampy. And I'm being careful not to leave round sponge marks or any large bubbles. You'll see some small little bubbles, and that's okay. That's going to give it a really cool texture. Now, I've tried all kinds of sponges. These are my favorites. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but it's the Martha Stewart pouncers. They're expensive, but if you treat them well and if you're mindful not to let your cats get a hold of them, they will last a very long time. My second favorite sponges, and the closest to these pouncers of Martha's, are those yellow no-name brand ones that you find with the wooden handles. Some of the other sponges have a different porous factor. Is that even technically correct? I'm not sure. Anyways, but I just find they don't blend as well for me. So I recommend that you try all kinds and just find the one that works for you best. Some people prefer using blending brushes, and that's totally okay too. Whatever floats your boat and whatever makes you happy is the right choice, I say. Now, to get onto the other side of the bottle, I'm sticking my finger in the hole at the top of the bottle to maneuver it around and just trying to balance it and get an even coat of paint on it. Don't worry too much if it's not absolutely perfect because, again, we're going to be adding a few more layers of paint. Once the paint is dry, I'm going to add some markers around the bottle where I'm going to add some gray strips. Now, I'm going to go with 3, but you can add more if you want. And I'm going to use my stencil as a guide so that I have them evenly spaced out. But feel free to just eyeball it if you prefer. Next, I'm going to use my ruler and run a line from my tick marks up to the top of the bottle. And I'm going to try to be as straight as possible, but it doesn't need to be perfect. And these lines are going to be my guides for where I'm going to add gray strips up and down the bottle. All right, let's add those gray strips I keep talking about. First things first though, we need a way to cradle the bottle to keep it from rolling around. So I'm using a paint rag that I fashioned into a cradle to hold the bottle in place. I just rolled it on either side and kept it flat in the center. Using my sponge and starting with gray, I'm going to add a strip of gray all along the line that I drew. Add a generous amount of paint to allow it to stay wet long enough to blend. Now you can add the strips in either long or short segments, whichever works best for you. And as soon as you've added your gray, flip your sponge or grab another sponge and begin blending in the white. Just slightly overlap the gray with the white, little tiny back and forth, and go up and down the strip and keep going until it blends the way you want it. If the paint begins to dry, just reload your sponge and keep working it until you have it exactly the way you want it. Always remember to use a different sponge or the other side of your sponge for each color. And, try to have a third sponge available if possible, so you can do the final touches, kind of like a dry sponge cleanup. And if you get any gray into the areas where it should be solid white, just use a sponge with only white paint on it to touch it up after that area has dried. Now you might be wondering, why on earth are we even adding gray strips to this piece? Aren't zebras just black and white? Well, the answer is threefold. First, if you take a good look at the photos of a zebra, you'll see that their body color varies from white to gray depending on the way the light's hitting it. Second, this is going to give it the illusion of illumination. It's another fine album title, by the way. Talent agents, feel free to reach out to me. And last, but definitely not least, we're going to add gray strips because we can and because it looks super awesome. And actually, that's the best reason of all. When you've finished your strip, rotate your bottle just enough to be able to access the next line to paint. But be careful not to rotate it too much and rest it on wet paint. And just repeat what we did for this next section. When you get to the third strip, I recommend you take a 5-minute break to let the paint dry so that you can lay it flat. But if you're comfortable, you can certainly hold it up like I'm going to do and just keep on going. I will tell you, this darn bottle gets a little heavy after a while. All right, my lovely art friends, for your listening pleasure, I've added some happy music for us to enjoy as we finish blending our strips. A shout out and a thank you to Mix Kit. This one is called Uplift Me. Enjoy. So one of the things I often do is walk away for a few minutes and come back with a fresh perspective and take a look at my progress and make sure I like what I see. And in this case, I didn't like what I saw. Well, I mean, I liked it, but I felt that the gray needed to be much whiter. So I'm grabbing a bigger sponge. It's much whiter, and I'm really going to open up the bottom quite a bit and then taper it off as I get up to the top. So the sponge I picked is way too big for my little palette bucket. So I'm going to move my paint into the center where I can access a large pool of paint where the sponge fits better. I'm going to widen all 3 strips. I'm going to go through the same exact process that I did for the smaller strips, and just remember that blending takes time, so try not to get frustrated. If it all starts to turn gray and get messy, just let the paint dry and start again. When you blend the white into the gray, use less paint and add gradually. And if the white begins to take over, then add more gray down the center and just blend, 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 and then blend some more. I bet at this point you're probably glad you only went with 3 stripes, right? Here's some more lovely music to enjoy as you widen your strips if you want. If you like them smaller, that's fine too, but I didn't feel like it gave enough of the effect that I wanted. Now, maybe if I had added 3 more strips, like 1 in between each of the narrow ones, that would work. But I didn't like them spaced out so far. I wanted it to be, I wanted the gray area to cover more and be balanced with the white areas. All right, my lovely art friends, it's time to add our design. I'm going to begin at the bottom of the bottle and then work my way all the way around the bottle until I get back to where I started. Back where we started, here we go around. Okay, all right, I need to stop before I torture you. Stop it, stop it, stop it. I did the first few rows with a black chalk pencil so it would show up good in the video for you. But I'm going to finish the rest in regular pencil because the black chalk is just so messy and it smudges so easy. And you got your hands all over the bottle and it's just a mess. So take a look at different zebra designs to get an idea of how you want your stripes to look. Make it random or make it uniform, whatever you like. Just remember to avoid making the ends rounded. The ends should be straight and slightly slanted or should be pointed. If the edges are too round or too square, it will end up looking like tiles or stones rather than zebra stripes. So just work your way all the way up to the top of the bottle until you've filled in the design, and then we'll worry about the neck later. One other tip when you're drawing in your design, make sure that each row up, that the stripe crosses over where the two stripes meet in the previous row, if that makes any sense. If you have every layer of stripes starting and stopping at the same point, it's not going to look random and it's going to look like you have these strange seams going up and down your bottle. So I hope that makes sense. Now, I usually use white chalk pencils because they are easy to erase, but I can't see the marks on the white part of our background. So just remember that when you draw with a regular pencil, it's not as easy to erase. So just try not to apply too much pressure on your pencil marks. And just remember mine are dark and heavy on purpose for the video so that you can see them. All right, it's time to start painting in our design. I'm using my fine lining brush for two reasons. First, I want the points of my stripes to be neat and tidy. And second, painting with the fine lining brush adds a thick coat, so I'm not going to need to come back and add a second coat. This is one of those times that I'm going to say the pencil marks are more than just a suggestion. They should really be your guide as much as possible. Because like I was saying earlier, erasing lead pencil is much, much harder than erasing white chalk. Now, I only use a small amount of paint at a time, which makes these craft palettes super handy. I took several breaks during this part because it's really easy to try to go faster than you should. And so I recommend you take your time, use up the paint that you poured, then take a break. Go pet your cat or go get some tea or something, come back, pour yourself some fresh paint, and just have fun. So while we're painting on our design, let's talk about how to remove labels. There are a lot of methods you can use to remove the labels from the bottles, and I don't really think one is better than the other if you're just removing the label to remove the label. Does that even make sense? I think it does. What I mean is, if you want to preserve the labels for a wine journal or a souvenir, then you will want to use a method that won't damage the label. I wanted to just quickly get rid of the label, so I peeled off what I could, and then I used some Glue Gun and a green scratchy pad, the kind that doesn't have a sponge on it, to remove the rest. If you don't have Glue Gun, try using some cooking oil or I guess coconut oil, kind of expensive, but something like that instead. You can also soak the bottle in hot water for about a half hour, and most of the labels should come off easily, and then you can use a scraper or a razor blade to remove any stubborn spots. You can also use OxyClean or baking soda to aid in removing the glue. I've seen where people say they use ammonia, but I wouldn't want to deal with that. So it's whatever you want to use. Now, if you're planning to keep the label, then you're going to want to use a heat method. And I've not tried these methods, so I can't say whether they work well or not, but I did read that you can preheat your oven to 350 degrees and set your bottles in there with the label side up and place it so that it doesn't roll around on the rack and cook it for like 10 minutes. And then make sure to use hot pads to remove the bottle, and then use a razor blade, like starting at the corner, getting up underneath the label to begin to peel it. And they say don't pull with your fingers because it's likely to tear it. I also read that someone was using a blow dryer to do this, but that sounds like it would take a long time, make a lot of noise, and really try your patience. So also, I've seen some products out there that claim to lift the labels off intact. I haven't tried them, but if you have, maybe you could let me know how it works out. Now I'm going to speed this up, and then I'll join you again once we get to the neck of the bottle. How's it going, my friends? Look at how awesome this looks so far. I mean, just wow. So we're going to complete the neck of the bottle next. But don't worry, it's not a bottleneck. Ah, good grief. Anyways, it's the same pattern, same concept, except as the neck gets smaller, the stripes get a little shorter. Keep going all the way up to just underneath the cap lid. Now, I didn't draw my stripes on, I just winged it. And go ahead and draw on the stripes if you like, or if you feel confident at this point, just start painting. And away we go. Well, this is looking pretty darn amazing. Once your bottle is completely dry, it is time to finish the painting portion of this project. So we're going to paint the cap area now. I thought about painting it black, but then I decided, let's get crazy and add a vibrant color. So using a small brush, I'm going to apply my first coat of Bluegrass green. And then I'm going to use a small sponge to apply the second coat. This way the texture will match the rest of the bottle. Now you can use any color you like. Take a look around your home, maybe pick a color that will match well with the rest of your existing decor, or do something wild, spice it up. Anything you decide, it's gonna look great. After you have added the second coat to the cap area and your paint is dry, get out your eraser and remove any remaining pencil lines. I decided to run the eraser over the entire bottle a few times just to make sure I didn't miss any marks. Check for any areas that might need a touch-up and make any adjustments needed. Now, sit back and marvel at the awesomeness you just created. Holy moly and mega wowzers, this looks so amazing. I recommend you let your bottle rest for at least 2 days before you add your varnish. And I'll show you how to do that in the next step. All right, my lovely art friends, it's time to varnish. Before you begin, make sure you are outside in a well-ventilated area and you do not have any pets nearby. Also, be sure to protect your patio against any overspray. Now, I had to wait an additional day because it was so windy, and to add to that, the landscapers were out lurking nearby, and that would have just been a total nightmare. Leaves and debris stuck to my bottle. No way, no thanks, I'll wait. And one other tip you might want to consider is to wait until your family is up in the morning before you start shaking any bottles with metal balls in them. It's not that I'm speaking from experience or anything. I got this really cool pampas grass, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, online. It was cheap, and it comes with little ends that fit perfectly into the top of the bottle. All kinds of colors, all kinds of textures. So take a look online to find what's perfect for your piece. Thank you so much for joining me today to Paint with a Passion. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to painting with you again real soon. Let me know what you think, and also let me know what you'd like to see in future tutorials. Please remember to subscribe and hit that notification button so you know as soon as I have a new tutorial out. I wish you peace, love, and happiness now and always. Have a great day.